Welcome everybody to the webinar on advancing portfolio management through visualization, standardization, and customization, a lot of words, an Adobe success story. So my name is Laura Nee, and I am the president and CEO of VPO. And I am joined today by Justina Hyland, who is going to walk you through Adobe's journey for advancing portfolio management through our software solution called VPO. So Justina, thank you so much for joining us. A little bit about Justina is she is currently director of the project management office at Adobe. She has over 20 years of experience in project management, and she's developed a successful career in the high-tech computer industry. She's skilled in team building and leadership, in addition to contract management and strategic planning. And she brings to the table not just the breadth of knowledge, but also deep understanding of the value in cultivating and nurturing strong relationships. Justina has further developed and honed in her program and project management expertise by earning a master's degree in business administration with a focus on global management. So we are really happy to have Justina join us today and share her journey and her experience in working with VPO. And I've had the luxury of working with Justina for almost 5 years now. Yeah. So I'm really happy for her to be able to share her experiences with the audience today. So a few housekeeping rules. This is a webinar, so all the participants are in listen-only mode. But we do want to make this an interactive discussion. So if you would like to ask a question as we go throughout the presentation, please feel free to. You can do so by using the question in Zoom's control panel. And I'll be manning that as we go through the presentation. So I can interject. There's the Q&A, or sometimes people use the chat. So either way, feel free to ask your questions, and then we will also have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation today as well. So without further ado, Justina, I will go ahead and ask you to go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Laura, so much, and for that great introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here today. When Laura asked me to present, I'm always happy to do so for a couple of reasons. One is because we really do have a really positive story of how we got to where we are today using VPO. And what I always find is I love to share the things that I've learned, because I've learned so much from listening to webinars like this from other customers at VPO, and what they do really gives me good ideas of things that also my team can implement, which helps us be more efficient. And so I'm hoping you get one or two good things out of this session. And like Laura said, please ask questions, because I really like this to be an interactive session. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay. Okay, so really what I'm going to be talking about today is just how our team started, just as a team in general, and why we selected VPO, and then how the using VPO help us to this point where we went through these phases of visualization, standardization, and then finally customization, which I think is going to be ongoing for some time as we learn more and more about what we need as a team. Before we get really into it, I just wanted to explain a little bit about my team at Adobe and what we do. I work in the workplace strategy team. And as you can see here in the triagram that we have, there's really 3 pillars to that, which is we have a real estate piece to that. We have our workplace experience team, which they're the arm that is producing all of the design guidelines for the spaces that we build. And then there's my team, and my team really interacts with both the real estate and the workplace experience team when we come together to decide to either do a tenant improvement on an existing office, to expand and take on an additional office and build that out, or if we do ground up builds. And in the presentation today, I'll show you a very large project that we're working on now that has not broken VPO yet. We thought it might 4 years ago, but it's actually the tool is handling such a large project quite well. I have 5 project delivery managers that work with me around the globe. We have 25 active projects that go on at any given time. We manage about $1 billion in capital for Adobe, and our global portfolio is about 60 locations.
Justina gets to
Yeah.
travel to the loveliest places.
Yeah. Or before COVID, used to before COVID.
Right.
Yes. So really, just my journey began with this is because I was really working on more the operations side and doing projects for Adobe just locally in San Jose, and where our headquarters is. And I was asked to form a PMO team because the way we used to deliver projects just really wasn't scalable anymore as the company was growing. So about 5 years ago, I was tasked to do this, and just really transform the way Adobe delivers projects, is to work through our growth. So I kind of, first thing I did is I said, well, what's a PMO, and what do we do, and what's the most important things that I should be thinking of as I'm standing up this team? And the one thing that really stood out is, if you look at this definition here, is that maintaining standards, right? Repetition, being able to standardize, and and that the fact that the PMO is a source of documentation and metrics around project management. I thought, okay, the first thing we really have to do as a team is we have to figure out what our software platform is going to be. So doing that, we did a lot of research, my team did. But just to tell you what we were doing before we found VPO is we really were working like probably a lot of people do, in that we had a lot of file folders. This little yellow file folder represents like everyone storing everything that they were doing for a project on their hard drives. So after the project was finished, if people moved on to other teams or if they left the company, we lost all that information that we had, because we were doing things. You can see at the top here, we were actually managing budgets and everything for our projects through Excel spreadsheets. And we did have, though, the one thing we did have is Adobe had stood up a SharePoint platform for us to use for document management. So we were starting to put documents from projects into folders in SharePoint, but that was really the limit to what we knew how to do in SharePoint. We knew that, we could store stuff, but we really didn't know really how we could manage a project just storing folders. Because anybody out there who's actually has tried to manage folders, to manage a large project, knows that everybody sets folders up in a different way. Everybody tries to find information in a different way. And so what I found with most of our projects, we were constantly updating our file folder structure and revisiting during projects, which was really, really cumbersome. So we kind of started here, a lot of file folders, a lot of individual spreadsheets.
Can I just add to Justina, when I first met you, it was interesting to me that, Adobe uses SharePoint as their standard, their global document management system. But it was amazing to me that they allowed every department to set up their own SharePoint sites. Like, they gave you the keys,
yes,
but then you had to figure out how to set it up. So most people who have that capability appreciate the capability, but they don't know the power behind SharePoint and some of the other things that you can do with SharePoint. And you specifically are known as a tinkerer. You love to figure things out, but you got to a point where you were still just using the bare bones of SharePoint when we met you to keep track of all the documents in an organized fashion.
Yeah, like I said, mostly a file folder structure that we kind of made up, and every time we would start a new project,
Right.
it would change, right? And we had no consistency, no standardization, right? So that was, even though we had SharePoint, we didn't have that structure.
And your IT people weren't willing to really help you set up SharePoint. They were just like, here are the keys.
Right. Well, basically they said here, so before we had SharePoint, we had a tool called eRoom. I don't know if anybody in the audience has used eRoom, but it was the same kind of thing. It was just a place where you set up some file folders and people started throwing stuff into those folders. It was always the same thing though, always confusing. Nobody knew what the file structure was. So it was very similar, but it was just I think the great thing about SharePoint that Adobe did do is they set it up so that we could share with internal or external team members. And that was what was the game changer for us, being able to do that. So fast forward, what we did as a team, we had SharePoint, but we also wanted to say, well, is there another project management tool out there that we could use that would be better than SharePoint? So that's the first, the journey that we took, was we just had this big search for options. Well, what we're going to do for the tool. So as you can see here, the things we were looking for is security. Definitely, that was really important to us. Ability to share with internal and external teams, have a consistent platform, find something that was easy to customize. I'm sure everybody in the audience has probably had some kind of platform one time or another that was very difficult to customize, even though maybe it was a good tool for you to use. Our must on this was it had to be able to integrate with SAP, because SAP is the accounting tool that we use, and it was really critical for us to be able to clearly see the spend for each of our projects. And we wanted a quick implementation. Everybody wants stuff quick, and a lot of the tools that we searched for just weren't going to be a quick setup. And of course, I think the last thing and the most important is the thing I learned about the search that we did, is that we wanted something to be affordable. Every company, we were looking for a lot of different software applications that were very, very expensive to stand up, and it would have been really, really expensive to customize. Oddly enough, we did initially enter into a contract with a big project management company, software company, to implement their software, and we had to abandon it after about 6 months because it didn't supply us with any of these things on this list that were really important to us. So
I remember working with you, and you were like, we need to have something up within like a month.
Yes, we were serious. We had to start and run and just keep going. And so none of those tools out there on the market allowed us to be as nimble and flexible and really responsive to really standing up this team very quickly. So with that in mind, once we did all that search, and we kind of decided that the traditional project management tool was not going to work for us. And so we decided to go down the SharePoint route and find out if we could find a company that supplied a project management structure that they had already set up. And that's how we found Laura and her team at VPO. So we started working with them and instantly felt like we were in the right place. So let me just talk through our journey, what we've been through in this transformation from, like I got the file folders to VPO. If we look back here, this is the 2018 represents the year 2018. We actually met Laura and team in 2017, decided we were going to work with them, and it started really at the beginning of 2018. And we started, this is where this visualization came in. I mean, we really didn't understand when we first started working with Laura's team what the end state was going to look like when we were going to start using this tool. So really the team, we worked with Laura's team to come up and with these standards that they had already set up. And we said, well, okay, we're going to start with what's out of the box that we get from VPO, which was a project list, which as we go through this, I'll tell you how integral that is to managing the team. So the project list with a lot of data in it, a project directory, which allowed us to add members to each project site, so that not every person got access to every project we had, but just the projects we needed them to be involved in, which gave us the security level that we needed. We had a documents folders, and we spent a lot of time figuring out what that structure should look like. And as you'll see when we go through this, we have changed that many different times, but we did have a starting point. We had workflows, so we had action item list, we had RFIs, submittals. We were able to really instantly being able to add tasks and issues. And the thing that we love the most about that is that we could have a ball in court and a CC. So every task, the team member that was responsible would get notified through email. So we thought that was really cool. And that was a really good way to help us continue to move our projects forward. There was a lot of lists that we used. And then we had a status report that Laura and team helped us set up. So this was how we kind of really started, but really what we wanted once we got set up with them was this ability to have that SAP integration. So this is kind of step one, and it kind of took us and got us started in 2018. We started using projects on it. Then we start working on the next round, which we call the standardization. What is it we decided as a team after we started using VPO, did we actually have to have, like that we didn't know until we started working in it. So getting back to that project list, so we started taking the data from that project list and built benchmarking data for each of our projects. And we started developing Power BI dashboards. And these things I'll show you as we get through this slide of our journey. I'll actually show you a live demo of what those look like. In the standardization phase, we had that project directory that we started with, but we kind of enhanced that by having an LDAP lookup. So what we found with our teams, the team members were saying, well, every time I have to add everybody's information into the project directory that we use consistently in other teams, it takes too much time. So the VP Laura's team found a way for us to do that much quicker and more efficiently.
What that means to the average folk is that
Oh,
we
sorry.
pull in information from Justina from Adobe's Microsoft 365 accounts that they're already tracking in their global instance of Microsoft 365, so that it pulls in all the contact information for each person at Adobe or anybody who's in that LDAP directory, so that you don't have to put their phone number in, their address, the location. Everything came in already for what IT was already managing for each employee.
Yeah, so it makes it so much more efficient. Going back to that documents library that we had, we did do another reorg of what that looked like for us as a team, because what we were finding is the more we were refining, the more we were adding more standardization and into VPO, the less we needed of certain file folders that we were using. And that's what I'm saying. This goes as, especially when we get to customization, we start to lose even more and more of that file folder structure, and that turns into other things. So we did another reorg of that, and we still had the workflows and the list. And at this point in time, we decided we'd like to start enhancing those status reports that we had before, because we started using the modern forms, the modern view, I guess, versus the classic view in SharePoint. And that allowed us to take data that we already had somewhere else in SharePoint and create the status report from that. So our team didn't have to, every time we had to do a status report, they didn't have to go make a lot of configuration changes. Basically, they were just changing the date of the status report and doing very little else and had an instant status report to share with our leadership team. Again, we'll be showing you that when we go to the live demos. And we got our first round of SAP integration done during the standardization time, which was really has been a game changer for us, because we can see all of the POs and invoices that come in for each of our projects. We have a summary page for all of the capital spend by material category, which will show you what that means in the demo. And we were able to utilize the PCO log, which really, the PCO log is a great way for us to associate a change order directly with the PO, since we have POs that are showing up in the accounting information for VPO.
And just to add, I think that people think, oh, integration is just magic. But what we realized is that some of the ways that people were entering the information into SAP had to change, because there was missing information in order for us to map it at the project level initially. So Justina, you went through and really worked with the SAP team to get the right data into the system and out of the system so that we could integrate it with VPO.
Yes, yeah, and it was the reason why it was so great for our teams, because prior to this, if I wanted to say as a project manager, well, how much spend has there been on a PO to this general contractor, I'd have to go into a separate system. We use Ariba, and I'd have to pull up the PO from there. And it was just really you had to go out one system, go into another system, and it wasn't all in one place. And so it was really difficult for PMs to be able to track what POs were issued and how much we spent against those was invoiced against those POs. And then the last thing that we did during this standardization time is we developed a project intake form. And what that is every time our real estate team has to, when they start looking into whether they're going to extend a lease, they're going to, we're going to take additional space, or we're going to do a ground up build, we go through a process together of going through an intake process of talking about what that looks like. How many seats do we need? How big does it need to be? Sometimes we look at multiple locations and we're doing multiple test fits and developing budgets for those different scenarios. So instead of, we were kind of doing it again in a vacuum, maybe having some file folders on everybody's hard drives, we decided to do that through this intake form, and I'll show you a live version of that. So that was kind of our standardization phase. And I think that's where we got to the point where we're like, okay, I think we've got what we need, right, as a PMO team, but we really wanted to take that to a next level, because what we found is the more we used BPO, the more we started collecting more data, the more ways we could connect the dots with those data and get better output on our dashboards and a lot more information for future projects. So we go fast forward into the customization stage, and we took that project list to that next level. So everything you see in red on this customization, these are the new customizations that we did after standardization. So what we were able to do is we were able to work on some more enhanced dashboards than the original one that we were reporting on. We found out there was more ways to get more data that we needed. And also for me as a manager, to be able to see the amount of work each of my team members were doing, so I could help adjust as we were adding more projects. I could see who was going to be ready for the next project, depending on what stage their projects were in. And so that was very helpful for me as a manager. And then we also set up this cash flow dashboard that our treasurer team wanted to use. And we wanted to make it a self-service dashboard so that every time the treasury team needed cash flow information, then they could actually go look at this data themselves. So we'll look at a live version of that soon. We still kept the project directory with the LDAP look at. That still is the same today. And our documents folder, I think we did one more round, again, of reorganizing what that file folder structure should look like. The workflows and the list pretty much remain the same, except for on the list side, we actually started utilizing a timeline using MS Project. So instead of just making a list of activities for our schedules, we were actually using a template and using Microsoft Project to manage all that. And then we also, at this same point in time, have been working, well, and we're still working on this, is a drawing log, which I can't wait to show you in the demo. It's one of the best things I think that the team has come up with so far, and to help us manage drawings, because drawings can be, as everybody knows on this call that's in construction, making sure everyone's utilizing the latest version of any drawing is so critical. And so I think this one for us is really a game changer. Instead of throwing files again in folders, we actually have an organized way of seeing what the most recent documents are, and really understanding for each issuance of drawings, really why did we issue this change, right? So it's just really a lot more information that we've ever had, a lot more organization. We're still using the same status reports in the modern view. We did go through another round of SAP integration, just kind of I think on the back end, really to change the way the data was being loaded into each project site, which has made it way more efficient. And our SAP team has fixed a couple bugs that we had along the way. So it's this version 2 of it, I think is really working really well for us. And we really did an update to the project intake form and turned that into a different modern view of the list that we had before. So a lot there. Laura, is there any questions from anyone so far? Or?
No, but if anyone would like to ask any, please feel free to put them into the Q&A or the chat feature But I think everybody wants to see the software, right?
That's right. Let's get to it. So the only thing on this slide, really, what's next for us? I mean, we've talked a lot about what's next. What's next is we'd really like to have a centralized data warehouse for all the data that's going, because now we have a lot of data after, I think we've done almost 100 projects now using VPO. And I think it's time for us to get to that point, because we're now seeing teams that want to start using a lot of that data and not having to go to each site to pull it in. And then we are going to be working to go to 100% conversion to the modern view of SharePoint. Because right now we have a mix, as you'll see when we go do the demo, of some classic list, and then we've got some things that are in the modern view. Okay. So with that, let's go take the tour. Okay. I'm assuming that I'm still sharing, or did I lose that?
No, you're
No.
not.
Let's
Somehow
try.
you stopped sharing.
Stop sharing. All right, let's go back over here. Okay. Are we back there, Laura?
Yep, you're good now.
Great. Okay, so this is our portfolio site. So really, this is the high level site that we use that we have all of our team information on, and we also have our list of all projects that reside on this page. The rest of the projects themselves are subsites of the portfolio page, and everything, the data, we have a lot of data from all the different project sites that roll up here to the portfolio level. You'll see here we have the different time clocks here, because we do work around the globe, and sometimes it's hard to remember where, what time it is, and where all of our colleagues are working. And many of our projects span from people that are working in California to people that are working in Europe or Asia, all at the same time on these projects.
It's such a simple tool, like just to even have makes such a difference to know like what the actual time. And sometimes we have clients that do weather, to see what the weather conditions are at those locations too.
Well, and this really kind of shows our team members too that we're, it's more inclusive. We're not just feeling, that we're not just California centric, right. We do really care about what time it is around the globe. So let me run you through the menu on the left-hand side to show you all the different modules that we have within the site. We actually have a project management playbook, and this is a tool that we use probably for a lot of people that are new to the team, just so that they understand the 6 steps that we actually follow on any construction project that we do. And if you click into it, then it just gives us a list of what's the objective of this phase, what are we delivering, what resources do we use, and who really gets involved in this phase. And we've got it lined out the same way for all 6 phases of the project. Get back to that. So the next thing that we have in here is our benchmarking list. And this is the list that we actually started developing right in the beginning of when we started setting up VPO. And really what it is, it's a list of every project that we've ever run through VPO. And it's broken up by, by location and region, because we do a lot of reporting it varies by region what the spend is for each of our projects. And what we do is we break it down by our material categories that we use for each project. So professional fees, construction cost, technology, furniture. So we have these specific categories that we use for each project. So what it does for me and our team is a lot of things. It tells us, how much are we spending on each material category, depending on each region. And it also gives us by project type, how we're spending our dollars. So a refresh may look different than new construction, of course, than a relocation. And so this particular benchmarking spreadsheet we use in the dashboards that you'll see as we get to that too. But this is just one example of how you can take data from projects that we're running within the site, and you can aggregate all of those costs into one list and utilize that to manage future projects. The other thing we have on the site is cash flow projections. And this is part of those dashboards that we are using in Power BI. This takes a minute to load here, but it actually, and we can break this down. We've got historical information that goes back to 2021, and we have forward-looking data that we can share with our treasury team. Down here, we have a graph that shows by month how much capital we do forecast to spend. And the next enhancement we're making to this is that our treasury team would like to see how well we're forecasting. So we're going to actually be showing them what our forecast was and what the actuals were to see how close we are getting to projecting the right amount of cash that we're going to be spending. We also have a list in here that we use a lot with our members of procurement and legal. This just is a way that we track every contract that we need in order to start a project. This is the list that we use for that. So when my team members have a new project, a new contract that they need to have work done by procurement, we'll put it in this list, and we will make sure we'll follow it just to see how long it's taking to get those contracts, because that's really important for us to be able to start projects. And this is our project list. We actually track this by what we call an IO number, and I think probably many other people on the call have similar numbers that they use to accumulate cost and for each particular project. And this is where a lot of data comes from for our dashboards. We put in here the square footage amount, how much was approved for the project, and we also track the progress of the project using this particular list. You can get to the project site using this list as well. We have our PM dashboards. And this has really evolved over the years. And this is a tool that I use for our leadership when we do what we call a monthly around the world leadership update. And it's a really quick way to show them, not to get too much in the weeds, but to give them a really high overview. And all of this data that you see on this dashboard actually just comes from that project list that I just showed you. So, well, let's see what, and when you have the live dashboard like this, you could actually, if like one of the team members or leaders said, hey, what's really going on in a particular project? Let's say if we wanted to say one of the big ones that we have going right now, we're doing a ground up build. So if I just click on this list over here, click on the name of the project, it'll tell me how many seats are being added, what's our budget for that project. And it really tells us here, this is by region of where we're working. And this is a breakdown here by material category of where we're actually spending our money on this particular project, and a nice map of where it is. So this is a really big tool that we use a lot. We also have, in terms of dashboards, I can also look at, we were talking earlier about team performance. I can actually pull down this dashboard by my team member, see what projects they're working on, and what's the dollar value, how many seats are being added by their particular projects. And then over here, you can see this project status. You can see what phase they're in each of their respective projects.
It's just awesome, Justina.
Yeah, it's good for me because then I can keep track of what everybody's doing. And then the other thing here that I've also done, again, using the data I already have, every year when I have to submit my annual report to leadership about what my team did for the previous year, I actually just use the data I have in VPO to create a report. So this is just being pulled in from, again, that PMO list. And it makes it quick to be able to share with leadership. The other thing that we've done with the dashboards is I've created this list of, you can see by the map here where all we've made investments. And of course, the bigger the circle, the bigger the investments we've made. And this is data that I've been collecting since 2018, since we started working with Laura and team. I could actually, if I wanted to, here on this dashboard, if I wanted to say, hey, what's all the work, what have we done since 2018 in any particular city? I'm trying to pull up one where it might be a lot. So in Lehigh, where we've done a couple of ground up buildings, you can see here the projects then that we've done and how much money we've spent in that particular site since we've been working on this project. So I love this tool. I can also take a look at, since 2018, how we've been spending the money. Is it, I kind of like to look and see, well, what are we spending on construction cost versus professional fees versus IT spend? This is a combination of every project we've ever done around the world since 2018, and how that pie gets, how the costs get allocated. No surprise, construction costs are the biggest piece of the pie. But the other thing that I can do, again, is I can look and say by region what that looks like, because it's definitely different in Asia than it is in North America. Okay. The other thing that we can do here is I can look at the cost per square foot by region of projects as well. And I can break that down, because we track it this way. I can break it down by project type. So if I said, hey, what are we spending on new construction? North America, certainly this was the last time we did a ground up build. It's not the one we're finishing now, and versus India, right? So we can see what those costs look like. It's always more expensive to build in North America than it is India. So anyway, just wanted to give you an idea of what you can do with the data that you do collect using VPO. Let's see. Let's take that back to going back to our portfolio level. Let me take you to the project intake form. We talked a little bit about that earlier. So what this form does, again, each of these forms that we've set up, they have data. So if we're collecting data in these forms, we can use it later to develop those dashboards. So in this one, this is an example of a project we're intaking now. We're thinking about taking on a new space in Atlanta. And so what this general info tab shows us is just the information about what address we're looking at, how big it might be, how many seats we might put there, what the lease term would be. We've got a contact tab for people that, for the information on who's working on this intake particularly. And then we develop a list of goals. And we get that in here. And the reason we do that is because we try to make sure that once the goals that we set in this intake get carried throughout the project. And so this is a reference document that we'll use for the team when we do a project kickoff. And then it's also a reference we'll use throughout the life of the project. So if anybody forgets what those goals were, we do have them really well documented. As we're going through the process of selecting a site, we'll do various budget iterations, and we can, in this CapEx list, we can add as many different scenarios as we want to play out in this. And then we also have an action item list here. So as we're going through the process and there's different people of the team that have an action, we can document that here. And then we have a running list of notes, which is my favorite piece of this, because I just cut and paste anything, emails, document any conversations during the process. And then we have a list of attachments. Usually here, we'll put test fits, we'll put plans that we have for the building that we're looking at, again, as a good reference for everybody for future use. We talked a lot about the benchmarking list, Laura. And then what I wanted to show you next is really, this is the biggest project we've ever run in VPO. This is a project that's, as you saw earlier, might have caught that. It's well over $700 million project. It's ground up construction, 1.3 million square foot building. And we're doing this all in VPO. And this is really the earliest, a lot of this is the earlier version of that when we just started out, and we have enhanced the site, but it's probably one of our oldest sites. The one thing that we like to do on every project is if we have a construction camera, we like to have a link to that. And so I'll kind of give you a quick view of what this building looks like that we're actually building utilizing the software. There it is.
That's so cool.
Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. So it's 18 stories. And we're going to be moving in October. So it's very, yeah, great project. Let's see.
When did it start, Justina? When did you start the North Tower project? And it'd be ending in October. Wow.
Yeah, in 2017, and it will be done in 2022 with the building, and then we have a bridge that we'll be constructing in the following year. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. The one thing I was just going to show everybody here is on the purchasing side, just how this is our list of purchase orders for the project. And a project like this, we've got well over 1,000 purchase orders, and it's amazing that we can. The thing I just love, that's what I'm trying to. The scale of what can be managed in this is just incredible to me, right? That we've been, because when we first started this project, everybody was really concerned we were going to break it. Because the volume of information that's in here, and we were talking about the change orders in here. I was looking here last night just to see how many change orders we have processed using VPO, and there's 500 change orders on this project.
Wow.
In this list. So, and it's just, again, it's just incredible how we've been able to customize the list so that we can manage it on this large scale. Any questions yet, Laura, from anyone?
I believe there are actually. So let's see. How much time or money do you spend on having an Adobe employee serve as your VPO administrator?
That's a good question. So really, the VPO team administers the site for us. So that saves us a lot of time. We actually have the ability, whenever we have a new project, we actually just submit a request to VPO. It's probably 3 or 4 fields we have to fill out, and then they set up the site for us. So that part of it, and the same thing with the security. So whenever we want to invite someone to join the project, we have a project directory, and this is the project directory itself. When we add someone to this project directory, we can say, do we want to invite them to VPO or not? And if we say yes, then the VPO team gets a notification, and they will do all the setup to have a new internal or external partner join the site.
And that's a follow-up question for you, Justina, is how did you get, user adoption, and how did you get everybody trained and up and running on using VPO?
That's a great question, and that's taken a while. I would say that was probably a little bit of a hurdle, only because we weren't used to enforcing something like this. And what I learned over the years from other companies and teams similar to ours is that we, in all of our contracts, whether it is architectural or our general contracting contracts, we do have a clause in our contracts that says that this is the primary source of for the project, of truth for the project, and that this is where all of the documentation for the project will reside. So that was one thing that we learned instantly, is that we really had to start doing that. And in the very beginning of each project, when we bring external folks or internal folks that haven't worked with us before, we do a quick overview of SharePoint and what the expectation is for using it. Also, the VPO team in the very beginning, they made videos for us of each of the modules that we were using. And that was really helpful, because then we were able to at least do a self-serve for people and say, hey, go watch these videos. But I think really the most impactful was actually just walking people through it. And then the other thing that I've learned to help get adoption is, as I'm running a project meeting, like an OAC meeting or design meeting, I'm actually pulling up SharePoint, and as we're reviewing documents, I'm going to the location where they are on SharePoint, just to continually orient people on how to find information on the site. And the good thing is, because we have standardized, that when we have the architects that we use the same, the internal teams that we use that are the same, when we have repeat consultants that work with us, they know how now, after going through one project with us, they know how to find things on the site and how they're supposed to be posting the information on there.
And that there is a follow-up question to security, and how do you have multiple participants in the same project? How do you control who sees what?
Well, if you look on our directory list, you'll see a column here that says security group right here. And you'll see the different security members that we even have on this project. As we have engineers, consultants, external PMs, architect. So what we did in the very beginning with Laura and team is we defined by each of these types of groups that would be using the platform, what should they be able to see? And so now when we ask BPO to set someone up. So if it's an engineer, we just say, okay, we'll use a security group for engineers because we know we want them to see just this particular part of SharePoint, right? If we have an external PM or even an internal PM to Adobe, they can see everything in the site. That's been really helpful because, as you know, there's a lot of financial data on here, and there's a lot of contracting data on here, and we don't want other consultants to be able to see that information. And we don't want other consultants to see, we have an internal documents folder also that's here. And that is really just, this internal documents folder is just for the PM team to see, and not for the architects, not for the general contractors. This really just is an internal document folder for those managing the project.
And one last question, how many users do you have across all the projects, or how many different companies or do you have using it?
Well, a good example on North Towers, we probably have well over 200, and because it's such a big project, I mean, well over 200 external team members, partners using it. It's not uncommon in most projects to have up to, 50 to 100 people, depending on the size of the project. And what we have found is that because we're using VPO to administer it, they really help us to get people into the site, because that would take a little time, I think, if our team did it, because we're not as well versed on how to make sure, especially external team members can get on the site. But because the VPO team does that for us, it's pretty seamless.
Okay, and there's one more question.
Okay.
As a large company, did you have difficult time getting your internal IT security to approve the use of VPO? What was the collaboration like?
Well, once we found the right person, I think that was the key. It was really finding the person inside Adobe who his role was to help teams set up SharePoint sites. And he really became that catalyst, and he still is today, for anything new or that we want to do within the site that maybe hasn't been standard for Adobe. He's really good at being an advocate for us. So finding that right person in IT whose role that is, and there's going to be someone at your company that's their role, is really important. And really, once he understood the vision of what we were trying to do, he really ran with it and helped us get it set up pretty quickly.
I think that's where the question's coming from. Like, did you have a hard time getting buy-in from your IT to buy VPO and to start using it?
Well, Adobe had already adopted SharePoint,
right?
So we didn't have to do that piece of it. But we were really a first group that wanted to use an outside company like VPO to help us set it up and to administer it for us. And I don't think we had a difficult time, because Laura and team are very professional. They knew exactly what needed to be done. They had to go through a security screening as we do for all suppliers at Adobe, especially handling data that's Adobe related data. So they did have to go through a screening process. And so our compliance team would make sure that they would be a trusted partner. And once all that happened, I think from that point, it's been fairly easy to make changes and to have them continue to administer it for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Laura?
Okay, yes, there is one more. Has there ever been a time when there was a dispute or when you were able to refer back to VPO records to resolve it?
Oh, yeah. A good example, we did a project in Seattle, and we had a problem with the flooring that was specified by the architect. And so again, going back to the fact that we have all the documents, the RFIs, the submittals, we have all the contract documents, everything in one place that we could easily reference and that our legal counsel can reference. It made it so much easier. If we had been in that same situation where we had to figure out who had what document on their hard drive, that would have taken a lot longer to get resolved. I find myself constantly referring back to other projects, maybe even projects we did. We're working on some projects now in New York, and we did a project in a similar building, 3 years ago. So we've got that information to refer back to, and it's really nice to have that available to us to do that.
Yeah. And I was hoping that you'd show the timeline too on your homepage for the project, because I think that's pretty spectacular as far as having everybody on as your audience. You've got different stakeholders. Everybody wants to know what's happening. So I like the timeline that you have even on this. I looked at this particular project for just being able to share information with people right there.
Are you talking about this project timeline, Laura? This one's a little,
yeah.
There's a lot of colors, a lot going on here, but yes, this is the project timeline. This one we've split up into 3, because really we're running 3 separate projects in one. This really shows the core and shell timeline. This is the interiors construction timeline, and this is our bridge timeline. And yeah, it's this is again going back to the one source of truth. We really want this needs to be updated so that every team member, if they're trying to figure out what we're doing at what period of time, this is the one source of truth for everybody to see. And we do have this on every project. And we had talked about the status report. That timeline feeds our status report. This is a beautiful picture of our new auditorium that will be inside this building. But the status report really has a narrative that the PM can write about what's going on at that given time with the project. We do have over on this side our countdown clock that for every project that says when we're going to deliver, how many days away we are, and you can get into that full project timeline from here. Progress photos, again, this feeds from the photos on the site, and then this is an overview of the budget. And again, from a leadership perspective of what we're spending. And then this is that milestones list. This actually feeds from the timeline. This is a way more detailed key milestone list than we would have for most projects, but because it is a ground up build, a lot of this information is important to the leadership of our company. So that's why it's such a long list. But this is that status report that just pulls data from other parts of the SharePoint site. And we don't have to really do a lot of work when we're sending these out on a monthly basis. Anything else? The only other thing I wanted to show, Laura, was this new drawing log, which I love. Maybe it's the colors, maybe it's just the organization, but so maybe I could explain to the group what we use this for. So every time we have a document issuance from an architect or any of our consultants, they actually document it by starting with this issuance and summary, and it's basically a form they fill out that really explains what type of issuance this is, and then at the same time they attach all of the drawing files for that issuance. So if it's a DD set that they're dropping here, 50% DD, they can drop it in, say what division it is, what phase of the project, add some comments. And it can also be routed for signature, which I love about this, because on a lot of projects, we do want teams to sign off on the drawings. And then once the information is documented in here, those drawings that are from the issuance log actually roll up into this drawings list, and it's by phase. So in this situation, this is a project we're just starting up right now. We've gone through the SD phase, and it'll show the list with a thumbnail of the different issuances we've had during SD phase for architecture. So this is in this respect, the reason I really love it is because it definitely shows when we've hit what phase it is, what percentage complete it is, and the most recent issuance is on the top. So anyone looking for drawings can find the most recent issuance for every discipline that we have, either for whether it's SD phase or when we get into construction set of drawings. This one they're just starting that, so there's really not a lot of detail here. But in the DD phase, you can start to see the architectural drawings and the electrical drawings in here. So it's a lot more organized way to find the drawings for a project.
And once we started working with the drawings being issued, then taking this to some other customers and looking at different applications of use of this, we were able to, there's so many other things that can be issued through the project. It has the same kind of workflow need where you want the issuance to be identified and the change of documents in the construction phase, correspondence, non-compliance notices. Like we have one client who wants like 5 different issuance modules.
Yeah.
So good job, Justina and team coming up with the request.
A lot of iterations on it, but this is why I love VP and Laura's team so much, is that if we think about something or they think about something that might be good for us, they're really patient to iterate with us and go through different versions until we get to the point where we're comfortable with it. But we couldn't say enough about this, especially I just feel like we've just grown up a little bit. Instead of just throwing things in a big folder, we actually can see what really is the most recent issuance and why was it issued, right? A lot of times we don't know why it was issued, but this really supplies us with a lot more narrative on the drawings that are dumped into the site.
Definitely. Okay, there's one other question too. So I would encourage anybody who has any more questions. We're getting to the top of the hour for Justina. So, but this question, so feel free to submit questions. This question is from a customer I know. So, with Adobe using SAP as the backbone, did VPO create the data interface into and out of SAP for all the reporting data? Any insight into how much SAP data is interfaced? So I can say, yes, we did the integration for the project. We worked with the SAP team, certainly, and Justina was a conduit to that. But then, the information that comes out, Justina really guided us as to what the information was needed. And then how much data would you say is coming through? It's a nightly download of information from SAP for all the projects that are capital projects. I don't even know how to address the actual volume of data, but it's a lot.
The volume, there's a lot of data that comes through every night, because what the data we're getting is when a PO is issued, if there's an invoice issued against a PO, if a PO gets changed. So anytime there's any transaction against a PO, that data is submitted, it comes through with the feed every night and then gets consumed on the project level in VPO. I think what we just had to figure out in the beginning is SAP, there's a gazillion fields that but we kind of narrowed it down to what is it we needed to see. And then you guys helped us map that, those fields that we wanted with what SAP could provide. And you mapped that and did all the back end work on the VPO side. The SAP team delivered to us the fields that you wanted to consume in there. And I think we did a couple iterations and tests. And then once we got that running properly, then it just kind of runs by itself every night. So it updates, I think, at 10 o'clock every night. And it's sometimes, well, you can see, like, especially on a large project, it could be a large volume of data that comes through, but it's very seamless, and we don't really babysit it too much. It's just on autopilot right now, which is fabulous. And if, just to give just a, I know we're at time, but just to give a quick look at what that summary of all of that looks like. I was just going to do this really quick. This is one of our largest projects. So you can see all this data that's rolling. This is just a summary by material category, because it's how we track our cost of all the POs and how they roll up into these categories. And so it's just a quick look that we can see how much we've spent and what our total obligations are remaining. So this is just a summary page from all the POs that get issued into VPO.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But and we were getting, even data that wasn't pertinent to your project. So we had to filter out the data set that we were getting to make sure that we only listen for your project's information, to pull that information into, so that we're not, necessarily consuming everything.
Yes, exactly. And it's a time saver, because if we had people that were manually doing this every day, it would
Yeah.
take a lot more time. So it again, big change, game changer for us.
Well, Justina, thank you so much. That's all the questions that we have so far, but thank you so much for taking the time to share how you've experienced VPO, and really appreciate working with you for so long. And, we're looking forward to taking it to the next level. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending the session. We will be providing a recording of it, and to anybody who's registered as well, in case you have colleagues that couldn't make the actual live session. So thank you, Justina. Have a great day, everyone, and a great week. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.